So for the most part, you can expect P1 to grab that again. This time reacting to the Gnar ban in the first phase. They don't want to let Solo get his hands on that one as well. We'll see what GCU does with their last ban here.
And we saw that when the Gnar was taken away from Solo and he was put on Shen duty, he wasn't nearly as impactful across the map. And going to be the Thresh ban taken away here. So the double ADC bans and the Thresh ban away from Xpecial, but that could potentially open up something along the lines of like a bunch of picks left open here. The Elise was the one that Mike Young didn't really get a lot of traction on in game number 1, but it's actually going to be the Jarvan they highly value this time around. They take that one away from Santorin or Solo, but they take it away from GCU for the first time this series.
Gonna grab that one quickly. I like this idea a little bit just because you've seen Santorin on the J4 twice. It's nothing you're necessarily scared of, but you don't think he prioritizes Elise potentially, and so you grab the J4, and then you might be able to grab the Elise as well, and you get Zig a nice matchup up on the top side. You already banned that Gnar away, and Jarvan, for the most part, even if he's not going to smash lane, he's in a disadvantageous matchup, he still has great lane setup, and if you play the J4 pick well, he'll always be relevant.
And then we see the Tristana being snatched up immediately by Goldcoin United, so Rakara's going to get his 3rd game in a row on, the Yordle Gunner. And now we see a Gragas being locked in. Santorin could flex that up into the jungle, could be in the top lane as well, but Santorin's kind of been the one that tanky style junglers is his meta. That's where he thrives a lot, so wouldn't be surprised to see that going in the jungle.
And Solo not being a great tank player, or I shouldn't say a great tank player, he just prefers bruisers. He has a good Shen, you saw that last game, was able to make some good teleport plays, had nice taunts, but it was often into situations where his team was kind of already losing them, and he had a hard time saving them from those. That said, he still performs better on things like the Gnar, like the Rumble, like the J4, and so it's most likely going to be a jungle Gragas. You see Phoenix1 once again go into that Varus pick, and we'll have to see here if they choose to grab that Elise and telegraph the J4 on the top side. That does potentially leave the Corki to get banned out in the second phase if they do go for that, though.
So they could wind up picking up double marksman, one in the mid lane, one on the bot side of the map if they so choose, or they could wind up getting something for Zig in the top lane. So it's going to be a Renekton pickup going in here against the, well, yet to be determined lane matchup for GCU.
Surprised to see this out of Phoenix1. You heard the analyst talking about, despite maybe the lack of playmaking out of Mike Young in the early game, a huge CS lead and gold lead over Santorin there. So this time opting for the J4 in the jungle will have even harder time getting that kind of lead. And it does start moving Phoenix1 away from the style that we saw in games 1 and games 2, which were fairly low on tank and very aggressive. With the J4 and Renekton already taken, they have some beef in their comp.
No, we are going to see the Corki taken away by GCU. So now kind of what's Ryu's next most played champion is he's played, between these 2 games in the promotion tournament as well. He's had 12 games on Corki. His next most played is Talia and, of course, the Orianna available as well. But what are the good matchups into the Corki? They ban away the Cassiopeia from GCU because that's what they played in game 1.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Cassiopeia, good champion into it. Ryu does play a nice Cassiopeia as well. It's one of his most popular picks. 4th overall, but still a good champion for him, so no surprise to see that one banned away. The Shen getting banned away from Solo to avoid a kind of very tanky front line where you can protect backline members or meet up with Santorin as he dives in on somebody. Solo had, like I said, a pretty good performance on Shen, so I do like that ban.
Yeah, so being able to take that one away and prevent some of the beefy front line, also preventing Rakara from being enabled to kind of jump forward in certain situations. Although they weren't the best calculated situations, it still led to an air of aggression from the bottom side of the map that GCU was lacking in game number 1. So like you said, like taking away the Stand United shield, but also the Alistar being taken away now from Xpecial by Goldcoin United. This happened in the last game as well. They're trying to eliminate some tanky frontline threats from P1, but also some initiation that P1 is very slim on in games 1 and 2.
Much more already here in game 3. And if they grab that Talia, his 2nd most played champion, they can expect to have even more playmaking available. But it does start moving them away completely from the style that was played in the first 2 games. And that might go into GCU's favor. They do seem to be, despite the 2-game deficit, fighting pretty well in the late game. In game 1, it felt like a game that they were inevitably going to win. As here, they take away the Cho'Gath pick.
Cho'Gath was something I kind of slipped through the cracks entirely in this entire best of 5 series. We've seen it being shied away from a little bit in the NA LCS. A lot of people are saying it was the trap pickup, where it was super, super strong and looked really good on paper, but was still kind of immobile on top lane, had good gank assist, but could, you know, the one-shot build wasn't necessarily what we thought it was going to be. Now we actually see the Taliyah is going to be locked in. They're hovering LeBlanc for a very long time, was getting kind of excited for it, but it will be the Taliyah that P1 lock in. So like you said, kind of distancing themselves from what they were working on in games 1 and 2.
And Special will go back to that Lulu pick as well, so a repeat of the bot lane. Once again, Mad Life, I think this is both times on red side getting last pick. Or I think they actually took the Morgana earlier last time around.
Yeah, they
Excuse
did.
me. So
he got the Braum last pick on blue side.
Yes.
So 2 games in a row.
And here gonna go, looks like with the Braum pick again, very, very tanky team comp. They do have decent setup for the Cho'Gath. That's one of the things that you were hinting at with the fact that he's a trap pick, in the sense that while he is very powerful, he is someone that takes 1, a high level of execution to pull off, and 2, often needs some help to lower that level of execution required. And while Gragas is maybe a little bit too much of displacing people around easily for the Cho'Gath, the Braum does bring some lockdown CC that'll help them out. And here you see a very skirmish style focus again for Phoenix1. Renekton and J4 can both scrap pretty aggressively. And obviously with Cho'Gath, Gragas, you're looking more for controlled team fights.
Yeah, so GCU once again kind of had the big beefy front line. They have the control in the game. They have, you know, the style of play that they really want to latch onto. It's Phoenix1, maybe not necessarily as pokey. I mean, Taliyah can still kind of poke, but not necessarily the same way Corki can. But she does have the Weaver's Wall to move around the map and make things happen on the opposite sides of the rift, depending on where GCU are going to wind up putting their priorities. So now, potentially a little bit more threat coming out from P1 if the focus from GCU is on the bottom side of the map. Once you hit level 6, you don't have your Shen, the opposing team has the Taliyah wall.
True, and one of the things we said about Ryu is it's about his roaming and plays like that. When he got the packages, he was able to get up to the Shen lane sometimes and punish the global. Taliyah very much can make the same play, and we'll have to see if Ryu can find those kinds of looks here in Game 3.
Well, if you're Gold Coin United, you're hoping that by taking the Corki away, you're taking away some of the momentum from P1 because your back is against the wall. You lose this matchup here, P1 is moving on to the winner's side of the promotion tournament, and they will wind up facing the winner of Team Liquid and United going on in the second stream. That means Gold Coin United would fall down into, you know, the do or die matchup tomorrow, which you do not want to be looking at if you're a team in the promotion tournament.
A very scary proposition, knowing you have 1 best of 5 left potentially. But here in Game 3, P1 looking to close it out in a 3-0. GCU just looking for the first win.
Yeah, and GCU, this is definitely a different situation they found themselves in last promotion tournament. They basically took every single matchup to a full 5 games against the LCS squads, and were basically 1 game away from promoting into the LCS twice. Once against Team Liquid, and then once in their final best of 5 against Envy. At this point in time, you were 1 Nexus Tower away from winning game number 1, and potentially 1 better team fight away from coming back in game number 2. You do not want to go down 0-3 after, you know, basically coming into this as one of the strong challenger teams that potentially could have gotten promoted after all the hype from last split.
It's especially gut-wrenching, like you said, when you take last split into account. 2 5-game series that they couldn't find the final victory in. And to come out here early on and potentially lose 3-0 is quite the hole to find yourself in for the rest of the tournament. And I think part of that does come down to how Rikara has been playing. Game 1, huge early deficit that hurt his team, and though they did eventually come back in the game, they started playing team fights better, was still unable to eventually find the win as Ryu had that great play. And then in Game 2, this time gets the lead in the early game off some great play, but makes the mistakes this time in the late game when he jumps too far into that turret in the bot lane.
You see P1 getting a little aggressive early on. Don't want Santorin to be able to hit level 2 off the Raptor camp, and Ryu gonna steal away one of those little Raptors to prevent that from doing so. So P1 already with a little bit of cheeky invade shenanigans going on. And Mike Young also, now that they've kept Santorin on that side of the map, immediately going from his own red buff, where he got a very big leash, and going to be able to steal away this blue buff from the side of Santorin. So very early game advantages for P1 this time around, and a lot more action than we've seen in the previous 2 games combined.
Be curious to see what Mike Young tries to do with this path after he finishes this buff off. You see Mad Life moving in, warding it out. They're going to spot him, so no cheesy level 2 gank down the bot side. Also, it looks like Arrow and Special have the push, which makes it kind of difficult to go down there for a level 2 gank. Instead, he's going to continue the counter jungling here. And surprisingly, Santorin is not necessarily going to split the map at all. Looks like there's too much push pressure up in the top side. Both Zig and Ryu have pushed their waves in and moved into the top side river to try and protect the jungle for Mike Young to stop Santorin from being able to go for such an invade.
And we see Zig moving into the top side jungle, places a ward over the wall and does spot Santorin doing his own Krugs, while Ryu is getting a bit of a shove on the Fly in the mid lane here, getting early level 3, which is now matched by Fly. So, like you mentioned, pressure and the advantage lanes going to the side of P1, letting Mike Young counter jungle away. All but one Wolf, take away the Scuttle Crab as well, and he's on a jet set to early game aggression so far. And we'll see if he's able to do so, because in game number 2, when he was on the Elise, we thought he was going to be able to. Didn't have the same kind of gank assistance from his lanes. Now on the Jarvan pickup, also a very early aggressive ganker. Could potentially have that from a seismic shove, or just from a ruthless Predator stun coming out from Zig right.
It is a funny position to be in, just because you want to go for aggressive ganks and those kinds of things, but you did just secure yourself 3 quadrants of your jungle. So part of you is like, all right, well, I'm just going to go farm away these raptors, and then I'll go up to my top side, and I'll do all that. And like you said, it would be nice to be able to find some early kills with all the aggression in the lanes, but he is going to be stuck in his own jungle in some sense, just farming up.
Doesn't necessarily have to make it super aggressive. His lanes were pushing aggressively, but if those minions bounce back, that could be the opportunity we see Mike Young going for, as he does have double buffs on, and actually saving his blue buff for later. Decides to pop the Scrying Orb, see if there's any wards available from the side of Santorin while he was on his top side of the map. Looks like there's not all too much, and they might just be going for complete vision control before anything happens. As the Scuttle Crab top side goes down, and Ryu's actually gone up there as well. They're just taking away all the vision denial and all the vision control, popping all the Scryer's blooms, hitting the blasting cones, and securing all the Scuttle Crabs. So very early vision dominance from P1 coming in here.
This is something that they did very well during their kind of rise in the middle of the split, was work through Mike Young to get things done and work around what he needs. So if Mike Young is saying, all right, well, if you guys go pushing your waves and control him to his top side, I can get 3 camps. And then when I get three quadrants of the jungle, and then when I can do that, I can go and invade and steal away even more camps and stuff like that. You see him up now, continuing his invading. As Santorin has been trying to make plays happen. He walked through bot lane off screen, was spotted out by P1, unable to turn a play. Here does the same thing around mid lane, as Mike Young works around that 430 Raptor timing. So he's able to steal those away as well. And you see a 2-level advantage already for Mike Young.
So Mike Young, massive advantage over Santorin. And this is kind of, again, even though they're not necessarily harping on Mad Life in the bottom lane, having huge advantages for Arrow and Xpecial this time around, they're taking out the other factor, the vision control equation from GCU, in the fact that Santorin is now super far behind. And GCU has shown so far this entire best-of-5 series, they don't feel comfortable doing things without complete control.
650 gold lead on Mike Young alone right now, just off all this great pathing early on. And it's not going to get any easier for Santorin here. Mike Young, because he did his Raptor so late, those will come up soon as well for him, and he can continue kind of snowballing this jungle advantage he's generated for himself here. And it's very tough for Santorin to get back in the game. Even though you look at that CS count and it looks very even to you, he's got 2 Krugs for himself, which are some of the least efficient in terms of how much the CS actually gives you. So it looks a lot closer than it really is.
It's like an inflated 8 CS versus all the other camps with more experience or just less CS overall.
Right, Mike Young has not touched his Krugs this entire time. Those have still been up, but he has stolen away multiple camps from Santorin.
He's doing it again right now.
He's still in there. Yeah, no reason to back out. You have pressure in a lot of these lanes. You basically have 3 pushing lanes in your favor here, and it's very difficult for them to find any way to force him out of his jungle.
Yeah, and we also see now that Mike Young still has that blue buff on, which was his that he wound up taking before, is now continuing to just cripple the effectiveness of Santorin. We saw Santorin has gone back twice already, has picked up a pair of boots and finished his Tracker's Knife. Mike Young, on the other hand, already has an additional Ruby Crystal just to showcase the advantage he has over Santorin. Now Mike Young might be going for a bit of a wraparound play. Fly was pushed back against the wall, and actually Santorin trying to get his own wolves here, but Mike Young is going to Dragon Lance and steal them away. Hits level 6 now, so he has the Cataclysm available, and Santorin has to be a little bit afraid.
See, this is one of the best things for P1 to be able to do, because the Gragas pick wants to go around and make explosive plays, flash body slam plays, get his team leads. He does not want to be stuck in this kind of game plan right now that P1 is executing, where he's just constantly tracked and they know exactly where he is. Look how much vision there is down in that bot side jungle on the side of GCU. It's very difficult for Santorin to find an opening, especially when he's so low level, not going to have access to that ultimate to knock someone back for quite a while.
Game number 1 was very interesting because we're talking about, the aggressive composition from P1 was looking to get early game advantages, and now Mike Young counter jungling away on Santorin's side of the map once again, now taking this blue buff away, trying to give it over to Ryu at the same time. He actually will, but Phosphorus Bomb lands here from Fly. Ryu, though, is going to have the protection for the rest of his bottom side of the map just to get away scot-free.
And this is why pressure in multiple lanes becomes so annoying, because that was a very risky steal in the sense where you're forcing Ryu to stand still and get hit by this Corki. But because your bot lane's also winning, you know that Xpecial can come up and join you. You know that Santorin cannot really contest this. He's obviously evicted the area already, so you have your jungler to back you up. And you don't actually need to be worried about the fact that, oh yeah, I just got chunked out for free.
And this is a different contrast to game one. As I was mentioning before, P1 was very aggressive with their composition wanted to do in game number one. They wanted early game advantages. They got a first blood and everything. But this is more of a cerebral aggression coming out from Mike Young. You mentioned that P1 pushing up in the lanes, playing around, and that was their playstyle that got them so far ahead at Rift Rivals. That was the playstyle that we thought was going to carry them through, you know, the middle weeks of the North American LCS. But it didn't pan out for them there, but this time around, kind of going back to what was working for them at that point in time. And this is, you know, people say aggression, they think bloodbath, they think a ton of kills, but this is kind of calculated aggression, a calculated playstyle that has gotten their jungler this far ahead and therefore gotten their lane safely through the lane phase.
It's similar to game one when there was, I believe, 2 kills to 1, but a massive gold advantage for P1 here. Only 1,000 right now, but it's one of those ones that feels like it's ready to boil over at any moment. Just one big Jarvan play around the bot lane or the mid lane could result in a turret dropping, and then the first Mountain Dragon, and then from there it continues to snowball. So GCU need to find a way to get a handle on this. Hopefully they can find the first blood and the first objective to catapult themselves back into this game.
Meanwhile, the bottom side of the map, they don't have the same 40 CS advantage they had in game number one, but they have something very similar to game number two, and that's the Ardent Center Rush coming out from Xpecial. Cleanse picked up for Ara again, the heal on Xpecial's Lulu, so they're going to be going for the very fast Ardent Center aggression coming out from that combination. Is actually Fly gets Seismic shoved back into the tower and needs a little bit of damage coming out from Ryu. Talia has to package himself out of there, but the mitigation, the fact that they've kept track of Santorin all throughout this early game for the first 10 minutes means that there are no repeat ganks and kills on that bottom side of the map, minus sidestep.
And the nice thing there, getting that package out stops Fly's roaming potential. Ryu has not used an ultimate yet, I believe, so we might see him join in on a fight soon.
Well, Fly's completed his recall on Santorin, now cut out here by Mike Young. We could see the Weaver's Wall coming in to try to cut off Santorin, but instead, Mike Young's just able to pretty much brute force him out of the jungle all by himself because of his advantage he has.
Yeah, I was a little surprised not to see that Talia ultimate just cut off the escape there, but not the end of the world, and it still allows you to potentially make plays down the bot side. As soon as you shove Santorin out back into his mid lane, you have the potential to get the inside track on a bot lane dive if you choose to go for it. And this is one of the things that GCU is going to struggle with preventing now, because you don't know if they're just sitting in your jungle, are they rotating down for a dive, are they waiting to rotate back to mid lane? Where exactly is all this aggression from P1 going to go?
Well, as we can tell, because we got the third-person view on this, they're putting aggression down on the bottom side of the map around that Mountain Dragon pit area. So top side of the map has been relatively quiet, as we see actually Solo has finished a complete Righteous Glory for himself. So Cho'Gath A-okay to survive this lane phase against Renekton to sustain himself up and get his first completed item.
Once again, the top side, Zig and Solo, not too much going on early into the game, all about the bottom half of the map. And on the one hand, you think that favors the Cho'Gath. He should be scaling. This is great for him, but it's not quite the case because of how many small objectives are going in P1's way.
Yeah. One of the bigger ones that will go down is this Mountain Drake, as they set up vision control and kind of GCU'd this one in their favor, as they're actually able to take that now. And P1 are going to scatter to opposite sides, a flash away from the Braum ultimate, though. The Xpecial's flash is going to wind up being down. GCU were trying to find an opportunity right there, but the Glacial Fissure found no one.
Good flash by Xpecial. You don't want to risk even getting engaged on it all. Just flashes out before it gets knocked up. But with that flash down, maybe GCU finds their ticket back into this game. This was kind of what they did in game two, was they aggressively attacked the bot lane with the J4 Braum. I mean, Gragas Braum, not too different in terms of being able to potentially abuse a flashless support or carry. They also had the Tristana insects coming in that game as well, so maybe Ricard can start kicking those off.
Actually see Stormborn Pack picked up for Santorin as well, so if he applies the CC, he's going to be able to keep Ricard and Fly if they join up in these later game team fights alive a little bit more. Also just the extra amount of life steal they can gain from that, but you know, just no team fights to be seen whatsoever. P1 are just kind of keeping the pieces of GCU separated from each other. More specifically, Santorin being an ineffective piece in this game so far. Has completed his entire Cinder Hulk, however, so he does wind up having an item finish for him. But Mike Young is yet to go back still and has about 1,500 gold in his pocket, which is 600 more than his opponent has.
So the lead has stabilized for the most part for Mike Young around 600. That's what it was, I believe, 4 or 5 minutes into the game. And, you know, you got to give some props to Santorin for not falling further and further behind, because the P1 invades early on was very much a group strategy kind of thing where they all work together to hold Santorin down. But he has mostly stabilized since then. Unfortunately, GCU has still lost some objectives, and he hasn't found a play yet, but he's made the best of a bad situation in some ways.
More importantly, despite being continuously invaded on and being able to stabilize, he's done it without dying either, which is, you got to give some credit to him in that factor. The fact that Jarvan, we talked about, very early game aggressive. He had the Talia coming up and helping him. He had Renekton on the top side who's coming up and helping him. We had Lulu going in on the bottom side of the map to, you know, make sure he was able to invade and steal away some of the buffs. But Santorin has stayed healthy, hasn't fallen down quite yet. Neither has anybody on the side of Goldcoin United. So as you mentioned before, P1, they want to get aggressive, they want to get early game advantages, and they want to be able to push those into an earlier victory than what happened in game 1. But Goldcoin United, they still have the scaling threat of the Tristana on their side. They still have the scaling threat now, not super high damage output, but the late game unkillable tank from the Cho'Gath, the Gragas, and the Braum. They're content to kind of sit back and keep this gold at the distance it's at now.
Exactly. I mean, if they're able to find the first blood, like we were saying, and maybe the first objective, they come flying back into this game, and then you start getting to a point where you are scared about that Tristana. Your two frontliners of Renekton and J4 mostly just build health, not a ton of resistances. They will get Gargoyle Stone Plates and things like that, but a lot less tanky than, say, a Cho'Gath will get, a Braum and a Gragas as well.
Looks like the first hole in the vision has been found here by Santorin as a control ward is in this brush. Goldcoin United are setting up and waiting for this one, but they do see that Mike Young is just in the river as well, so this might be a 3v3 situation. We'll have to see if they're content trying to take this one or not. Berserker's Grease and Build Order Cutlass compared to Berserker's Grease and 2 of the 3 pieces for Infinity Edge, so I think both teams might be content to go for this with Mike Young kind of pathing up the river. Santorin, oh, he body slams through to try to get a break in the vision, but, ooh, Special's gonna get knocked back there. The flash is not yet available. He's gonna get knocked out there by the Glacial Fissure, and one more shot. No! The Buster shot will not take him down, and now Mike Young's joined the fray. Teleports for days coming in on the bottom lane. One was actually canceled coming out from GCU, and that was, looked like Solo's actually, you know, he joined the fray, and the first one will go over to the Cho'Gath, but Zig is here as well, and now the rest of GCU are trying to turn tail and run. Fly was the one that did not join at that teleport, and it might cost them here as P1 answer back. They say first blood, but we got 2.
A nice answer out of P1 there. They were aware that GCU was trying to force down around that flashless Lulu. Mike Young was hovering down the bot side, and they were able to react quickly to that aggression. Xpecial just barely able to live. And I believe in the mid lane, Ryu might have used his ultimate to interrupt the teleport that Fly tried to use. I would like to take a look at that if we get a chance. Hint, observers if possible. But here you see it. Initially they jump onto Xpecial. The Buster shot just slightly too early. He's able to live. Mike Young goes for an ult right away that is flashed out of by Santorin. And there you see it. It was used to cancel, and then he used his Talia's passive to roam faster. So very heads up play out of Ryu once again here. Goes to get the first kill, able to join in and kind of punish because they get some knock up as the Braum jumps forward. Mad Life jumps through the entire minefield there, takes a buttload of damage, and gets 2 kills for P1.
You see there Fly with a big fat 0 in that fight for damage. Although Talia may have done a buttload of damage with her E, it was mainly Arrow that came through here, and now they can continue to prey down on Santorin, utilizing the smite just to heal himself back up off the red buff, but with Zig and Mike Young fast approaching, Zig's gonna slice and dice cut him down and gets himself a red buff.
And it feels like GCU's problem is as the game starts to get more and more aggressive, they start losing track of all those timers that they seem to love to play around. They know after that big bot lane fight, red buff's coming up for P1, they make an aggressive invade, something they've been doing all game long, but this time, because there was a skirmish beforehand and GCU's not playing with 100% awareness, they lose track of some of the members of P1, so instead of just being a red buff steal, it results in a kill as well.
Now we see Ryu going toe-to-toe against Fly towards the bottom side of mid lane. There's a package available for the Corki, while Mike Young puts on his dancing shoes and goes around the world with the Rift Herald, so that's going to wind up falling down in favor of P1. There have been no towers yet to fall in this game. Still a 2,000 gold advantage and 2 kills in the favor of Phoenix1, so this Rift Herald usage may be the one that breaks the towers back. It's actually Fly getting aggressive under the tower, picks up a solo kill on Ryu.
Very aggressive play out of Fly. It was under the turret a little bit there. Seems like maybe was able to poke out Ryu just a little bit and then pinned him up against the wall, able to land some auto attacks. Taking a look at that as they get the dragon off the back of that kill. Yeah, just already at a health disadvantage. Ryu just gets chunked out very hard by the Frost Bomb. Very easy kill. Didn't even have to use the package aggressively to secure that.
No, so Fly saying, well, my team's going to wind up trying to force this best-of-5 series into more games and have a chance to move on to the promotion tournament. I'm going to have to make some plays happen. So he does in a 1v1 kill against Ryu, who, I mean, we said games 1 and 2 have been the Ryu show, not because of his lane advantages, as we saw him dying solo right there to Fly, because of the ways he's been able to kind of carry his team into victory. I mean, carry his team is a little bit disingenuous. Game 1, he backdoored a Nexus.
Yeah.
Game number 2, he got a pentakill. So carry is a very loose term in this sense.
I mean, even in that last fight down the bot lane, you could say in some sense he carried it by making sure that teleport did not complete even faster, and then was able to throw in some damage as well. What's good for GCU here is they're able to grab the second Mountain Dragon of the game off the back of that kill. It limits how much true damage P1 will be able to do to these objectives that they love to force.
P1 are going to walk immediately into this gank here. Chanic Crushing goes after the Cleanse Flash from Arrow. Special has to Wild Growth himself. He even has a heal, but there's so many members of GCU. He's going to go down.
A nice punish evens up the gold count, but the first turret gold is still available. Looks like P1's going to try and force that around the mid lane with the use of this Rift Herald. GCU is going to be working on their own down the bot side.
Fly is trying to just defend against this. GCU are trying to race on the bottom side, but like you said, with the Rift Herald in tow, it's going to wind up going over to the side of P1. Mike Young even getting aggressive, trying to force Fly away, but GCU will answer back immediately by taking the tower on the bottom side of the map. Because of the first tower gold, though, P1 maintains about 2,000 gold advantage.
Not too bad for GCU, though. They had that Rift Herald. It was eventually going to get used anyways, and you got to force it out in a situation that I don't think P1 was exactly looking for in that Rift Herald case. So they're able to trade turrets during it, as opposed to just get forced mid lane into a 5v5 where they still lose their turret either way. They also get a kill down the bot side, so not bad at all for GCU.
No, and now we see, still there's a very low HP tower on the bottom side of the map, so P1 could potentially just send somebody down and hit that tower. It looks like they will wind up keep Arrow on the bottom side of the map with Big Special just to try to push that one down. Or maybe they're just giving him a red buff and he's going to rotate down towards mid lane and they'll use Zig, but either way you go, P1 still have advantage in this early game, and GCU, you mentioned, it looked like they're kind of floundering, not having the timers that they were playing around and not being able to take the game at their pace, but the solo kill from Fly kind of was a wake-up call for them to get themselves back on track.
And this gold lead is almost exclusively from Mike Young at this point. He's 1.6k gold ahead, a small gold advantage as well on Zig, but those are not necessarily the members who are going to get fed and snowball this game for you. I mean, the Renekton into Cho'Gath will have a hard time bullying him out, and Jarvan will mostly turn into an engage bot. So this is, while it is a gold lead for P1, it's not necessarily on the members you would hope for.
And we see Ryu now having to go toe-to-toe against Fly on this Corki. About level advantage has a Trinity Force for himself compared to the Marilla Namicon of Ryu. We saw Mike Young translating that gold advantage. About that 1.6k will be a Knight's Vow that he has acquired for himself. So, don't know. I'm assuming he's already pledged his loyalty to Arrow, but we'll have to wait and see when they get closer to each other. Because now GCU are kind of setting up in the area for a bit of vision.
There it is.
There we go. He hadn't pledged his loyalty to anybody yet. He was saving. Don't just keep your loyalty to anybody, Mark. That's why you pledge your loyalty to me. I don't care what you say about Dash. I know where your loyalties lie.
Easy there, Tom.
But Goldcoin United are now moving up their vision control to the top side of the map. They have the top towers that they can pressure down and rotate their dual lane up there to actually match the one that P1 has shown up there, while they have Zig pushing away on the very, very low HP tower on the bottom side of the map. And we'll see now if GCU and their vision control are going to be able to capitalize on the top side advantages here. By top side advantages, I mean the fact that the Baron is up here and they've already put down a couple of wards.
It's one of those situations with that turret so low on the bot side that you would love for your bot lane to go down there and take that turret. But if you ever show your bot lane down there, you have to risk this double marksman comp out of GCU, moving up to the Baron with that Mountain Dragon, potentially trying to burn it down. They have the Cho'Gath Feast to secure it. I mean, there's a lot of ways that if you put your AD carry and your support down there together, you could be in a world of hurt objective-wise. So I understand why P1 ends up with their bot lane up around the top side. It's just too late in the game to really force down around there. It's going to be on Zig at some point to find that, as Solo speeding up with his Righteous Glory there.
Righteously charges in and gloriously misses his skill shots, but it's enough to zone them away from the tower, and that's all GCU really needs here as they knock down that mid lane tower. They close the goal gap. It's only about 700 now in the favor of P1.
And this is kind of the story of the series, I'd say. A lot of the times, P1 grabs an early advantage, something's going well for them, and then slowly GCU claws their way back in the game, but for some reason, P1 keeps winning them. So we've been in this situation before a couple times. We've said the scaling's been in GCU's favor, but until they're actually able to out-execute P1 in the late game, you'll always have a little shred of doubt on the side of GCU.
Well, a lot of the times it's been Ryu to pull P1 through in these games, so we'll have to see if he's going to be the one that keeps them in this game and is able to potentially secure victory for them. But as we said, GCU were kind of off kilter with the fact that they weren't playing around these timers and the vision control that they like having, and were kind of just succumbing to what P1 was doing with Mike Young in the early game. Fly picks up that solo kill, kind of wakes them up. P1, they played around Mike Young for the early game for a very long time. They're able to turn a fight around on the bottom side of the map. But then after that fight, it seems like they kind of stopped playing around the advantages that Mike Young had, and that may be just a symptom of the fact that his Jarvan pickup, now that he's gone itemized for full tank, has got the Knight's Vow and the Cinderhold for himself, might just not have the amount of damage to really bully Santorin around. And
GCU deserves a little bit of credit for punishing P1. After they forced that Dragon down, Xpecial lost its flash. The next play that happens is another brute force down on Xpecial. It does get turned 2 for 1, but it's like you said, it's starting to break down into this way, and eventually Fly finds a solo kill, and like you said, after that, it feels like they've had control. Now they're using their tanky team comp to kind of brute force into this river, get into a vision control fight over this Dragon.
Yeah, the third and final Mountain Drake of this game is one that has Spawn Arrow in a bit of a precarious position. Utilizes the Chain of Crush and winds up landing onto Fly, but he's able to Corki package his way out of there. But that's Corki package down, but GCU has not gotten the inside track with the Scuttle Crab. Goes over the side of P1.
And this time it's actually a useful Scuttle Crab. If you get into a team fight, you can potentially use that to chase or disengage. And here you can also use it to know what the enemy is doing as you fight over this Dragon.
Weaver's Wall is used to just push people away. The explosive cast goes out, but Mike Young goes in. He silenced up and knocks up Santorin. Once again, him knocked in as well. Zig's trying to get in there, but Solo just chomps down onto Mike Young. But Zig's able to pick up a kill on Santorin. There's no junglers in this fight, but actually will still wind up going over to Gragas.
I believe he had a barrel down on the ground that finished that one off, funnily enough. But yeah, both junglers kind of being the bounce balls on the other team. They get knocked around a lot, and they end up going down in a bit of a trade. GCU already had the inside track around that Dragon. They were able to finish it off. And another scrappy team fight that ends up 1 for 1. Ryu kicks this off by trying to put them all against the wall, but Mad Life is able to block that, so they have a lot more room to work around this team fight. Mike Young gets focused down as well as Santorin. Santorin gets the smite to try and keep himself alive, but the Dragon finishes him off, and then the barrel gets revenge.
So that's how Santorin picks up the Dragon kill, but P1 immediately reset and move Ryu up onto this top side of the map. So hey, they said Ryu was going to be the one to try to pull them through to victory. He's able to get the second tower of the game and keep that 2,000 comfortable gold lead that P1 has had for pretty much the entire game. So even though the second Mountain Dragon goes over to GCU, they'll have a lot of effectiveness, specifically burning down this Baron. Like you said, with their double marksman composition, Ryu's able to even up the objective game with that tower.
Feels like this is going to be one of those games that's going to have a lot of explosive team fights around neutral objectives. Baron starting to be vision control focus of GCU here, grabbing up that Scuttle Crab, trying to get some deep vision down as well as some pink wards. And it's officially at the point where Zig has a really hard time pushing into Solo down the bot side. He just doesn't have the tools, the percent health damage to really threaten Solo in any meaningful way. And they can both clear waves in front of each other, but Solo will most likely have the pressure from here on out.
You see Fly on his own Corki pick this time around, has the rapid fire cannon and a Trinity Force for himself. Gets the towers back in the side of Gold Coin United's favor as he picks up the third one on the top side of the map, which is the final outer tower in their favor. As you mentioned, Zig having a bit of a hard time going toe-to-toe with Solo on the bottom side of the map here. You see Solo threatening to push down that inner bot lane tower. Very large Cho'Gath compared to that Renekton. But still, just the difficulties that Zig is having. He's at about half HP right now, and Solo just A-okay, sustains himself up with that Cho'Gath pass.
Yeah, I mean, Zig also has a little bit of sustain through the Call to Meek, but it's just not a fun position to be in. Solo just sits in the wave, turns his E on. If you get hit by those spikes, you get dropped down low, so you kind of have to wait for him to finish clearing the wave by himself, and then you can potentially take that fight.
We see them fighting over the coveted Krugs, one of Santorin's favorites this game. as now GCU immediately seeing that multiple members of P1 are moving down to P1 solo, as he actually has Fly for some backup. The other 3 members of Gold Cognac are going for a Baron, and actually GCU's duo on the bottom side might be winning this 2v2 skirmish. The Baron, though, hasn't backed away from as Mike Young throws down his Demacian flag and sees over the wall, but at the same time, GCU, they started up 2 different objectives. They barely don't get either, though. That tower barely stays alive.
I like that decision out of GCU, though. They kind of read that Ryu might be making his way down there, and they want to counter out that potential play. They also have the teleport on Fly, so they don't need to worry about if Ryu's not there and they force around Baron. GCU can, of course, react to that one. They almost get the kills. They do get the turret down extremely low. They'll be able to pick that up probably in just a minute once Solo resets and gets back down to that bot lane. And you see the struggles once again. GCU's team comp seeming to outscale, seeming to turn online, but they haven't made the back-breaking play to actually secure themselves a game yet.
And the thing is, P1, unlike game number 1, does not have massive advantages like they did previously. Before, it was about a 10,000 gold lead, and there were a couple of bad Baron fights that went against them. This time around, it's a 1,000 gold lead, and they're down in towers at this point in time. So Gold Coin United have set themselves up for success in this game, and P1, I mean, if they had opportunity to win game number 1 straight up in the early game, the same exact point in time, it's passed them by at this point. They're gonna have to try to, you know, find that weakness, the hole in the armor from Gold Coin United, and try to expose that and run them around the map like they did previously.
And Ryu, one of the guys who's been the big playmaker on the side of P1, is on Talia, a champion that's a little bit less, you know, has a little less agency than Corki to just do whatever it wants. Corki has the package, has a lot of damage, has Valk repositioning tools. Talia has a harder time kind of just going in and trying to see if you can chunk somebody out freely. You have your ultimate, which is a great tool for working within your team, but if you're trying to go and make a play, be a hero, Talia not the best champion for that.
No, and of course your teamfight effectiveness has gone up, whereas you don't necessarily just have raw damage. You mentioned the Weaver's Wall to cut off routes of escape, seismic shove to reposition, and more importantly, secure kills on the carries. It's actually Arrow on the front line. Chain of Corruption goes out, he dodged out on the explosive cast as well. Mad Life coming in to try to save Santorin, the teleport in the back here coming in from Solo. Ziggs joined the fray just by walking through, though. He's the only frontline member from P1. The rest of his team's kind of forsaken him, though. On the other side, the Weaver's Wall comes out, separates them into a full house situation, but there's the Corki package slicing across the team. The first kill of the fight goes over to GCU's Rakara. They're chasing down the fly over the wall, but they picked up a kill on the Santorin, and Corki afterwards, it's Ryu that gets a double kill, but the Tristana jump is there, and they find a kill onto Arrow, resets and leaps onto Xpecial. A triple kill now for Tristana.
Very scrappy fight by both teams there. Arrow has a nice outplay on Santorin to start that one out. They chunk him down. Both teleports come through, but then P1 is forced to back away through the river into the fight, which kind of abandons Zig on the front line. He starts getting focused down, and off the back of that, GCU is going to start being able to mow down some objectives. They take the inner turret. They're going to try to work down onto this inhibitor turret, but Ryu's there to defend.
They got a big, beefy Cho'Gath to tank up as many hits as possible, but you don't want to be taking free shots from Ryu's Talia either. So GCU, they come out ahead by 1 kill in this fight, take a lot from it.
And there you see Arrow slightly outplaying Santorin there, gets the body slam in, forces him to flash out. Mike Young jumps in, wants to meet up with Zig to kind of put in a Bash Bros fight in the backside, but they get kited out. They have to wrap around the far side, which leaves Zig alone now. He starts getting focused down. A good wall out of Ryu kind of splits the team up a little bit, but they have the tools to get involved in that. Corki packages in, but hold on. We got a Baron fight.
I don't know who actually started this one. Mike Young is the one that gets chunked out, but it looks like both GCU and the Baron, and now Gold Coin United are in pole position around the Baron area. And they're starting it.
They're starting it out. Decide that there's no replay worth talking about. They want to make a new one here on the Baron. They're melting it down with double Mountain.
Ooh, the Cataclysm comes out though, but Solo just noms down. The Feast secures a kill on Mike Young. Santorin's able to secure the Baron first. The Explosive Cast knocks Xpecial back into the fray, and Tristana has leaps for days, but it's a double kill that goes over to Corki. Zig now is going to get knocked down as Rakara goes unstoppable, and GCU take another team fight.
Good play out of GCU there. They have the opportunity with that Cho'Gath ultimate to decide if they want to use it to secure the Baron or kill the enemy team. They use it to kill the enemy team's smite, therefore securing themselves the Baron, and then they can win the team fight after grabbing a 4-for-0 and going to continue pushing here with only Ryu left alive.
This giant 4.7k HP Cho'Gath is going to be content to tank up all the towers and keep all the minions alive with his Baron buff push. GCU. There's still barely anybody left alive from the side of P1, and they just might be brute forcing this down. They might be taking game number 3 and giving us a series here in the promotion tournament.
There we go. GCU fires back, taking game 3. Off the back of some great play out of Fly and Rakara. Fly started it off, bouncing his team back into the game with a solo kill in the mid lane, and then Rakara, late game, took over once again with some great Tristana team fighting.
Yeah, so Gokwan United showcasing the fact that you got 3 tanks, you got 2 carries, you got superior team fight composition. If you keep yourselves within that 2,000 gold area, you're going to be able to bounce back and take fights in the later stages of the game. But P1, they still had a very similar composition, or I'm sorry, they had a different composition from what they were normally doing with the Corki pickup and the kind of 1-3-1 kind of split push setup that they normally had to group up a little bit more for fights, had to try to get more advantages or just gold leads from their early game, and they weren't able to spiral it out of control. But even though Mike Young was 2 levels ahead of Santorin for most of the early game.
Yeah, and this was kind of what we were saying in Champs Like, is that, you know, P1 has definitely moved away from what we've seen in the first few games with this composition, and the leads that they were getting onto Jarvan is something that you would traditionally see people trying to do for a Nidalee or an Elise, a champion that can really go in there and just solo kill somebody if they're starting to get low. There was a time or two where Mike Young took a fight in the jungle with his 600 gold lead and tried to kill him, but it's Cinder Hulk versus Cinder Hulk at the end of the day, and if you're not bringing someone else to help you find those kills, they can't do it. Once at Wolves, Santorin gets away. They do find a kill once at Red Buff, kind of going for those aggressive plays, but it was not enough to snowball the lead by any means, and a couple plays out of you know, GCU is able to pull them back into even, and then their team comp is much better late game.
Yeah, and as we saw, Gokwan United were able to hang tight and hang in there, and were able to come out away with that victory. So now for an in-depth look at the GCU win, let's send it on over to the analyst desk.
Thank you very much, guys. And Goldcoin United able to pull one back here.
I mean, last promotion tournament, they couldn't close out a series. Trying to flip the script.
First victory for one of the challenger squads versus an LCS team.
They're deserving. They're deserving. They won 1. Now they're about to reverse sweep and keep us here for another 2 hours. But let's go ahead and take a look at the team compositions here on the lower third. Corki now getting moved over from Ryu. Ryu had played it multiple times before, had great success. Now in the hands of Fly, we get to see him as a playmaker.
Yeah, and he had a lot of DPS. I mean, that's what Corki's brought for, right? It's the Tristana and the Corki. We've seen multiple team comps work where the spacing between those 2 carries allows the other one to get off auto attacks during the focus on him, and it definitely did come up huge. That being said, I also like the Talia from Ryu. You know, he had some good interrupt and some very big plays for the team.
Yeah, Ryu had that one really sick play where he just threw out the Talia wall, interrupted the teleport, kept roaming. So he was clearly good at the champion, but Corki does bring a ton of sustained damage in these really long and scrappy team fights we've been seeing today.
And one of the reasons why he was able to do that was the Cho'Gath. Cho'Gath got huge, soaked up a ton of damage, and really gave Zig a hard time in the top lane.
Yeah, Cho'Gath's an interesting one here because he is nerfed on 7.15 when compared to 7.14, where he was banned in a lot of the different games. Less percent max health on his E. And if you put a lot of time into it and you're able to have any type of setup CC, whether that be a Gragas or a Braum, then he becomes much more effective. He got a very good teleport off early in order to get first blood with his feast, and that did set him off in a good direction.
Right, and they had a couple of great team fight wins, which led to this replay that we have here at the Baron Pit, 4-0 for Goldcoin United, plus the Baron, which ended up closing out the game.
And a lot of zoning here from the Cho'Gath, as we talked about. He uses the Ruptures very well. He also uses the threat of the feast very well. Mike Young's going to go around, use the Blast Cone, get over to the Honey Fruit, but then he ends up going for the steal on Baron, and then they also take the fight. You have to make the choice. You're either going for the fight or you're going for the steal on Baron, and you're sacrificing someone. There, he goes in, tries to get in for the right timing with the Cataclysm because you can't get interrupted, but he gets killed on impact, and that's immediately the whole team fight since the entire rest of the team is also there going for the team fight while they're sacrificing a member who's going for a Baron steal. That's why you have to have a clear decision during these endgame objectives, and you can't have the split going for a little bit of both. You lose the game immediately. You fail with both.
Yeah, especially because it was blind. He jumped in with his Cataclysm at 3,500
It had like a pink ward. I don't know when it got in there, but there was a pink ward in there.
I think it was afterwards.
If it wasn't blind, he jumped in way too early because the Baron was at 3,500 health, not even close to a steal. I think the call there should have been to fight if they were going to do anything at all. You're generally not going to win a steal against a Cho'Gath, because he can feast for 1,200 health, and you're almost never going to win that smite.
Shouldn't.
So, miscommunication. You're almost never, not saying never.
No definitives here on this desk, but that leads us to ask the question, when is Mike Young going to step up? Because Ryu has been playing his butt off, making plays on Corki, making plays on Talia, but Mike hasn't had the dominating series. He got the Nidalee, and thankfully Ryu went ahead and backdoored, but he got outscaled and hasn't really transitioned huge leads to any of the other lanes other than Ryu.
Yeah, currently, I'm not willing to put it on Mike. He had a 1,500 gold lead over Santorin in the mid game. He's had similar leads in all three games
He had a
this series.
2-level lead as well for the majority of this game.
I mean, I don't know what Santorin was doing. He was level 3 at 6 minutes. But aside from that, Mike Young was power farming in a lot of good ways. So it's the team play that these guys are lacking. I think Mike's getting his leads. They just need to be able to use it.
Well, Santorin was the victim of some pushing lanes on both sides, and that's how Mike Young was able to get in there for a lot of counter jungling early on. But yeah, I wouldn't go ahead and lay blame.
So where's Gold Coin United need to go to continue the success that they found in Game 3 that they weren't able to find in Game 1 and 2?
Yeah, I think they continue to do scaling. Unlike the Team Liquid series, which was a very quick and decisive 3-0, all three of these games have had windows where Gold Coin United have winning scenarios. They got backdoored in Game 1 after mounting a huge comeback. They were up 9 kills during that game. They had an early game leading Game 2, and they actually won Game 3. So I don't think they have to change too much. I think they just need to continue to try and get stuff like Trist, try and get team fighters in the mid lane, and just go for the big team fight wins.
All right, well, Gold Coin United were able to make a series out of this. Meet us back here after the break to see if Phoenix1 can go ahead and bounce back for Game 4. You're watching the North American League Championship Series.